Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I'll be splitting my time with the member from Cowichan, Malahat, Langford today. It's a huge honor, Madam Speaker, to rise today on behalf of the people of Courtenay-Alberni and as the critic for the federal NDP on small business, tourism, and fisheries and oceans and economic development. Madam Speaker, as we know, the third wave is amongst us, especially here in British Columbia. I won't be surprised if further measures are announced by the provincial government today, but right now we know that restaurants are closed for the better part unless they're serving on a patio outside. Many small businesses are restricted in what they can offer right now, and it's having a huge impact on everyone in all of our communities, on their mental health and well-being, on their economic opportunities. People are scared. People are wondering how they're going to survive the pandemic, especially those in the hospitality and tourism sector. We know that the small business owners have done the right thing. They've closed their doors or they've adhered to public health measures to protect public health. They're truly the unsung heroes, I believe, of this pandemic, Madam Speaker. And in my riding, tourism alone is almost 10,000 jobs, Madam Speaker. So it's having a huge impact on the people in our communities. Right now, we still aren't seeing any supports for startups, for example, Madam Speaker. There's a bakery, a brand new bakery called the Wildflower Bakery. Really is a wildflower. It's fabulous. It's a great eatery that's just opened up. They're employing people. They're creating economic development and prosperity in our community, offering diversity in terms of the cuisine. And they're a new startup and they can't access the wage subsidy. They can't access the rent program or the loans, the CEBA loans, Madam Speaker, yet they're still paying rent. There's common sense provisions the government could provide so that they could qualify for the wage subsidy and the rent program. But the government's chosen to leave them out. They've been abandoned by the government. And we know that there's a group that started SaveStartups.ca, Madam Speaker, and they're building momentum. This is a generation of businesses that we could lose if the government doesn't amend the programs and create more flexibility. And we're hearing from a lot of people that are falling through the cracks that can't access these programs, whether it be the HASCAP program or many of the programs that are offered. They might be off a basis point or two, or they somehow fall through the cracks in terms of the timing of when they started or whatnot. The government needs to create more flexibility to support these businesses, or we're going to lose them. And the cost to the Canadian economy is much greater than saving them right now, Madam Speaker. So we're calling on the government to come up with a program that we keep hearing from the minister. I asked the Minister of Finance about this very concern, and she said, the government understands this is a problem. We're looking into it. Well, this has been months that the government's been looking into it, Madam Speaker. Meanwhile, people are losing sleep or losing their businesses, and they're wondering how they're going to survive if they can. The other thing that we're hearing from businesses is they want certainty, whether it be the wage subsidy or the rent program. We know that there's a commitment from the government till June. What we need is the government to commit that they're going to be there in place till the end of the pandemic. And, we just met with the Tourism Industry Association of Canada. They're deeply concerned. We know that this summer, for example, regardless of how quick the vaccine rollout is, it's very unlikely that we're going to have international tourists coming to our region. So if you're a business that operates and relies on international tourism, you're going to lose a second summer, Madam Speaker. So we need the government to commit that they're going to be there right to the end instead of actually doing segments like we're doing. And this uncertainty is killing business, Madam Speaker. And also, it's very difficult for them to go out and seek financing and get the leverage that they need to continue to get through these difficult times. The other thing, Madam Speaker, is the CEBA loan program. The expected repayment date of end of next year is going to be nearly impossible for small businesses, given that there's a third wave coming with such force with the new variant spreading so quickly. We need the government to extend those repayment loans. In fact, I know when I had a loan with the Community Futures Development Corporation in my riding, it was a 10-year loan for $40,000. So to expect that repayment date to be the end of next year is completely unreasonable. And they need certainty that they're not going to be gouged with a high interest rate should they have to repay it. The other thing, Madam Speaker, is they need to increase the loan. I know the government just extended it to 60,000. They need to increase it to 80,000. Given that it's the third wave, it's the third round of impact that these small businesses are adhering to. It's just impossible for many of them to survive without better support, and that would be increasing that $20,000 that they don't have to repay if they repay the loan in a certain period of time, expanding that so that the government can help absorb some of the costs that they're incurring. The other thing is, Madam Speaker, we know that the government's talking a lot about a childcare plan. Well, here in British Columbia, we have a provincial government that's investing in childcare, and they need a federal partner to create accessible, affordable, universal childcare for everyone. And the chambers of commerce in my riding are calling for that. They were calling for that before the pandemic. In fact, the Comox Valley Chamber of Commerce cited it as their number one priority before the pandemic. Well, we know that that's needed even more now than ever before, Madam Speaker, given that women have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, and many of them are struggling on how they're going to get back to work and how they're going to get the support they need. Madam Speaker, the government continues to not want to tackle merchant fees. We're paying some of the highest merchant fees in the world. They've got a voluntary rate of 1.4%, which is based on, the big players, whether it be the Walmarts or the big, large multinational corporations paying even a lower rate. That means that the smaller businesses are paying a higher rate, where in Europe, they're paying 0.3%. And we know this isn't a priority of the government. And in fact, in the last government, Linda Lapointe, a former member of Parliament from Quebec, who made commitments to the Quebec Convenience Stores Association, to other groups in Quebec that they were going to take on this issue. She moved debate on her bill 16 times, Madam Speaker. Clearly, the government didn't want this bill to be debated, and they don't want to tackle merchant fees. And I really was appreciative of the spirit of her efforts there, but clearly it got shut down, and the government needs to take this on. I know the Conservatives don't believe this is an issue that they should intervene on. We heard from their finance critic that they don't want to see government intervene. Well, government does have a role and a time to intervene, especially when small businesses and merchants are being gouged by large corporations. And I've met with Visa and MasterCard, and they say it's not their issue. It's the big banks. Well, Madam Speaker, the big banks are having record profits right now. This is public information, and they're not paying their fair share in this pandemic. So, Madam Speaker, we're calling on the government to hold them to task and make sure they're paying their fair share. So, Madam Speaker, obviously you've heard me speak about the wild salmon emergency and how critical it is the government invest in wild salmon in this upcoming budget. Nothing in C-14 for that, despite the fact that we had the lowest return in the Fraser last year and the year before. But, Madam Speaker, one thing that's really close to me and the people in our riding is the lack of investment in affordable housing. The Rapid Housing Initiative, the government committed $1 billion out of the hundreds of billions of dollars in COVID support. The people most marginalized, the people that are falling through the cracks more now than ever, that are being isolated, are dying on our streets, Madam Speaker. And we've got an opioid crisis. I was talking to Julie Muhort from Qualicum Beach, and she's now joined up with Mothers Stop the Harm. She lost her son, Stephen, to a preventable opioid overdose that resulted from fentanyl poisoning, a drug source, Madam Speaker, that was tainted and has killed over 16,000 Canadians. Yet the government still hasn't declared a public health emergency. And Madam Speaker, we know that this requires a national public health emergency declaration from the federal government under the Emergencies Act. It's required so that we can manage and resource this issue and reduce and eliminate preventable deaths. She's calling for action, Madam Speaker, so that more sons like hers don't die due to tainted drugs. The current war on drugs has clearly been grossly ineffective and resulted in widespread stigma towards addiction in those who use illicit drugs. And we know the government's new bill still carries with it the stigma, Madam Speaker. It's not solving this issue. Criminalization of particular substances has resulted in the establishment of a drug trade that now traffics dangerous and lethal products such as fentanyl. And we need new law reform. And the Liberals aren't doing enough to end the stigma, and we need to decriminalize and regulate to ensure safe sources and proper measures and supports that will reduce the amount of deaths that are happening in our communities. We didn't see anything in C-14, Madam Speaker. I'm hoping in the next budget, the government's going to make it a priority, declare a national public health emergency, and invest a lot more than $1 billion in rapid housing. We're watching the sons and daughters of our communities die on the streets, and it's all preventable, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Guelph.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I always enjoy the interventions from the member across the way, specifically mentioning businesses and people that he's serving in his community. So obviously well in touch with the people that he's working with. I'm wondering whether the honourable member could comment on the delay tactics that have been used to bring this legislation forward, and whether the NDP could help us to move forward debates in the House so that we aren't delayed by 4 months to deal with legislation such as we have in front of us today.
Courtenay-Alberni.
Well, Madam Speaker, it's a good question, and it's frustrating. You know, we've seen the Conservatives continue to delay legislation. They haven't brought any new ideas forward to help in this crisis, and it's been challenging at best. But you know, the Liberals as well, you know, they're delaying. They're delaying every time that they're putting out programs with, you know, timelines like June. We're looking for the government to commit all the programs, whether it be the wage subsidy, the rent program, to the end of the pandemic. The small businesses need certainty. And like him, I ran a chamber of commerce. I was deeply involved in the small business community where I come from. And they're saying they need certainty and they need a stronger commitment from the federal Liberal government.
Honourable Member for Cloverdale, Langley City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Does the member have any explanation as to why the HASCAP program, a program that took forever to happen and was supposed to support those in highly affected industries, is yet again another massive failure? Why on earth would the government allow banks to deny HASCAP loans to small businesses because they can't provide a revenue statement? How can they provide a revenue projection when they have no certainty they can reopen in 2021 due to the pathetic vaccine rollout? How can this program be so dysfunctional yet again?
That's a good question.
For the Honourable Member for Courtenay-Alberni.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an excellent question. I mean, this is something that we're also asking, that the government fix the broken HASCAP program. People can't access the liquidity that they need right now. These businesses are, you know, they're running out of time. And they also, again, back to the certainty of the wage program and obviously the wage subsidy and the rent program. They need a commitment that the government's in it for the long haul, right to the very end, and fixing the broken program so that startups and those businesses that are being left out by whether it be small slivers of the current programs, or they need to be amended so they can capture these businesses and protect them. It's absolutely critical. So I appreciate her question, and we're looking to the government to answer that. Why is there such a slow rollout on the HASCAP program, especially when businesses are desperate right now?
Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Cowichan-Malahattan. Okay, I'm sorry. No, you still have 2 minutes of questions. So we have the Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank my honourable colleague for Courtenay-Alberni for bringing attention back to the critical public health emergency of the opioid crisis. He mentioned the extraordinary work and the courage of Moms Stop the Harm. Leslie McBain lost her son. She is one of my constituents from Pender Island, and it reaches every community. And it is not so much overdoses as fentanyl poisonings that are occurring, and it is urgent. And I just wanted to thank him for raising it and join in his hope that we will see a real movement in the upcoming budget to address the opioid crisis, if he wants to comment further on what needs to be done.
Honourable Member for Courtenay-Alberni.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank my colleague for raising this very important issue, because everyone across this country is being impacted by the opioid crisis, and it's preventable. These are fentanyl poisoned drugs that people are using right now when they need a clean source. She asked about some of the solutions. Well, we need therapeutic treatment centers like Portugal. We need the government to actually declare it a national public health emergency, and to build affordable housing so that we can get people in stable housing and get them the wraparound supports that they desperately need. It's the only way we're going to resolve this issue, Madam Speaker. And I appreciate the pilot project in Vancouver and Victoria that is happening right now, but they need to broaden broaden that right across the country. Rural communities like where I live in Courtenay-Alberni. I've seen like 3 of my friends' kids die in the last 6 months. Not seen them, but I've known them. And these are lives that are lost that are all preventable deaths that could have been done with common sense policy. Instead, the government is right now playing politics that's costing people lives, and it's unnecessary. They need to take urgent action. They need to listen to Mothers Stop the Harm. They talk about listening to public health emergency and medical experts. Why aren't they doing that right now when it comes to the opioid crisis?
Resuming debate.